welcome. I'd like to know, how would you process the complex and intriguing history of growing up in a household where stories were told of very difficult times? Linda Scholten grew up with parents who had lived through the German occupation in the Netherlands, and these stories colored her childhood so much that it sparked a novel idea that turned into a page-turning historical novel. Hi, I'm Amy Lou Jenkins, and this is The Author Effect. Please like, share, and subscribe, because when you do that, you're championing literature, and that fuels minds, questions, and connects us all. I'm excited to be here with Linda. We met in a very interesting situation. We were both in a mastermind-like group where we were working on a project. She was a little ahead of me, so her book is just coming out. I'm a little behind her. But one of the intriguing things about our connection was that we realized we were writing about the same thing, the same theme in completely different genres. I'm writing narrative nonfiction memoir about identity, secrets, lies, and how we unravel all of that to find out who we are. And Linda is writing about the very same thing from a completely different point of view, fictional, research-based historical fiction. So I think this is pretty exciting. Linda also brings some special experience. She's credentialed and degreed in counseling and in being a life coach. So she has a special understanding of people's complexities, their secrets, their turns, their emotional reactions, and she brings this to her characters on this surprising journey. So, Linda, welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy Lou. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh, great. Well, let's dive into your book. I noticed your novel feels both personal and historical as you move through the main themes of, identity, secrets, love. And as you began to formulate your idea, I'm wondering, when did you move from this interesting childhood to maybe this is a book?
Well, it was about 10 years ago. I was having a conversation with my mother, and I thought she was in her mid-80s, and I thought, I really should be writing down some of her stories, just for the family, So we made a special point of, having a conversation where I sat there and started taking notes, and we had a conversation, and then this idea started formulating in my mind about her being a pen pal with another girl at that age. And all of a sudden it started turning, to tell her stories. And then it started turning into fiction. And then my very first character, her name is Florence Hathaway, came just to me like that in my mind. And my mother was one of those students. And then the story just started taking off from there. And then it became fiction, not about my mother at all. Yeah.
That's just fascinating how art starts. And I wondered also if not only your experience, but if reading and books informed your love of writing or reading. And what could you tell us about that?
Well, I am an avid reader. And I love to read fiction that teaches me something. So I get to learn history, or I get to learn about science or medicine or whatever. Something to learn while I'm actually enjoying reading a story as well. So some of the books that, that informed my type of writing is, the very first one was The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Marianne Schaefer and Annie Borrow. So you would never know from my book now, but the original iteration of my book was in letters. So it was an epistolary novel, and I wrote that was like 800 pages before I finally just said, okay, stop, And so, because I couldn't think about how to write a book, but I could think about how to write a letter. So it was like a collection of letters through this pen pal society that Flo Hathaway had created. So that was one of the books. And then another would be Sarah's Key by Tatiana de Rosnay, which kind of follows two timelines where, there's something that happens in this apartment in historical Paris during World War II, but then also in modern Paris. So that also kind of gave me an idea. And then The Book Thief by Marcus Zukov, which is just an absolutely beautifully written book. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. We Were the Lucky Ones by Georgia Hunter, which is a novel based on a true family of Jews that were all split up but then survived. And then I was reading a book called The Lilac Girls, and this was way before I started even thinking about writing a book. And it was about women in Ravensbrück concentration camp. So then I ended up reading a 900-page history of Ravensbrück concentration camp. And I go, what am I doing here? Normal people don't read 900-page histories of a concentration camp. But I read it from cover to cover, and little did I know I was already doing research for my book.
That is awesome. So I understand that you spent also 3 years boots on the ground in Europe, Belgium, Germany, museums, archives. So you had all this material. How did you decide what to leave in, what to take out?
Well, actually, I didn't spend 3 years in Europe, but I did spend 3 years researching. And then I would find something I never knew, and then I would follow that rabbit hole, and I would write about it, and then I would find something else I knew, and that's why it ended up being like this 800-page, what I call my 11-legged octopus. It was completely out of control, completely unpublishable, but it's like I couldn't stop. The characters just kept telling me their stories, And then I realized, actually, I've got a series of books here, and at the time, I really didn't know how to narrow it down. But then last summer, in May of 2024, a dear friend of mine who lives in Spain contacted me and said, do you want to do a house exchange? So she would come out to Seattle and I would go to Spain and we would stay at each other's places. And I went, yes, I would love to do that. So I went to Spain for 6 weeks. And then I thought, well, I had wanted to do actual boots on the ground research, but I just never really thought how I could do that, and then I thought, well, while I'm in the neighborhood, I'm gonna do this. So I actually took a week during the middle of my time in Spain because I actually worked while I was there. I worked remotely as a life coach, so I can be in other places. But I took a week in the middle and I went to The Hague in the Netherlands and I did research at the National Archives. And by then I had enough of my story down that I knew I was writing about how Dutch people collaborated with the Nazis in World War II. Not all Dutch people, how some Dutch people did. So I went and did research on that, digging into the archives. And then I went and met a good friend of mine who lives in Berlin. And also, I knew places I wanted to visit where my characters had lived. So I actually picked the apartment building where they lived. I picked a bridge where they left secret messages when he was in the resistance. And so and then I went to the Resistance Museum and different places in Berlin, just getting the visceral feel of the places that my characters lived. And then when I came back and I started the mastermind group that we were in together, then because of that trip and my experiences, now I knew the story that this book was going to be. There will be others coming that from my other research that I had done, but this was how I chose to put it into a book that was actually a size that could be publishable and telling the story of my modern day character, Kate, who learns about a family secret and goes and researches it. She wants to find out the truth. And so she goes to the places that I went. She had some of the experiences that I had. So while I was traveling, I traveled as Linda, but I also journaled as Kate while I was doing the traveling and, what her experiences would have been with it. So it was really that trip that crystallized the book into the current version that it is.
Well, that is really exciting, and you have us so enraptured by this journey. Maybe you'd share a little bit with us. Could you do a short reading for us?
Sure. It's in the first chapter because I don't want to give too much away. And my modern day character, Kate, uh, she's a 48-year-old woman, and she's going to visit her grandparents in the nursing home. So that's the setting where they are. And her grandmother, she calls her Oma because her grandmother is from the Netherlands, and she calls her granddad granddad. And her Oma has dementia. So um, they're having lunch together, and her granddad is starting to tell the story of how he and Oma met. So granddad tells the story the same way every time to help Oma remember. I was a Canadian pilot in World War II. I had flown over Holland on bombing missions to Germany many times. But on this day, May 10th, 1944, my plane was hit by flak. I crash landed in a field in eastern Holland. When I hit the ground, I thought I was a goner, and then I blacked out. That's how he crashed into my life, says Oma, her mouth full of sandwich. I came to when some teenagers were pulling me out of the cockpit, yelling in rapid fire Dutch. The two taller boys got under each of my arms, and they half carried me, and I half hobbled to a nearby farmhouse. They brought me inside and laid me on a bed, and one of the teenagers brought me a glass of water. Then I knew it was the best day of my life. I looked up into Oma's bright blue eyes. She was the most beautiful girl I had ever seen. You were smitten, says Oma, taking another bite of her sandwich. I sure was, darling. Over the next few weeks, as I healed, we fell in love. I spoke a little Dutch because my family had lived in Holland before the war, and she spoke a little English. They taught us English in the resistance, added Oma. We were able to cobble together enough words in each language to talk to each other. After D-Day, when I was strong enough to travel, Oma's family connected me with people in the resistance who helped me get to France. He promised me he would come back to me after the war, and he did, says Oma, finishing her sandwich. Yes, I certainly did. I wasn't going to leave the love of my life to someone else, was I? Oma was alone at the house with her two younger brothers and couldn't leave. Her parents were working in The Hague. We got married so I could stay with her. Then later, I brought my bride to Canada, where we lived happily ever after, says Oma. Katie Popia, did you bring me chocolate? Katie gives Oma a piece of chocolate, and Oma looks like she is in heaven as she closes her eyes and lets it dissolve in her mouth. Now licorice, then more chocolate. With her mouth full of chewy black licorice, Oma says, when I was young, I got treats for winning races. What races, Oma? Running, jumping, just gymnastics, marching. In the summer, we swam and camped, and in winter, we skated and skis. I didn't know you did all those things, says Kate, intrigued. Oh, yeah. I liked to win because I could get chocolate or candy, and I would get a badge. Badge? Yeah, to sew on my uniform. We had to learn to sew, too. A uniform? For what? Did they have Girl Scouts in Holland? Would you like to play canasta, darling? Grandad asks suddenly, his voice wavering. Kate looks at Granddad. That's weird. Oma hasn't been able to play cards for a couple of years. Stop interrupting, Les. I'm telling Katie about when I was in the Hitler Youth. What did you say, Oma? I said I liked to beat other kids when I was in the Hitler Youth. I was such a good athlete that I went to Germany for Hitler Youth competition one time. At first it was fun, like Scouts, but for Nazis. But it wasn't so fun in the end. Kate looks at Granddad again. His face has gone white, jaw tight, eyes shut. So it's true. Oh, Katie Popia, how nice to see you. Did you bring me chocolate? Oma is gone, having slipped back into her dementia.
And that's what we call an exciting incident.
Oh,
Wow. So that's what we get just in the beginning, and this new information, and where is it gonna lead us? And, can you, hold your book up? I know this is your debut. Could you hold it close so we can see it? And, tell us what that feels like to hold that in your hand.
it's kind of surreal because it's like a book with real pages and words in it, and they're my words and my name. So it's surreal. And I think this picture actually is based on a picture of my mother in The Hague in the late 40s. The same background, same kind of coat, but for reasons that you'll discover in the book, the character is blonde, not a brunette like my mother. So like they kind of turned her around and used the same background. So there was, you know, a special meaning for me with having that as the cover.
Oh, wow. Who We Think We Are by Linda Scholten. And when and where can we get it?
So the book is launching in July, and it'll be available on Amazon. And so on July 8th, you can pre-order the Kindle for 99 cents, there's special pre-launch pricing. And then on July 15th, the paperback novel is available for $9.99 on Amazon. And if I sell the most in any particular genre, in my genre of historical fiction on those days, then I'll become an Amazon bestseller. So if any of you are planning to buy it, if you could buy it on those days, that would be really doing me a favor.
That's right. And if you're unfortunate enough to have to wait a while, if you don't catch this video till later, buy it anyway.
Yeah,
It's worth it. And we authors, you don't know how much it means to an author to tell people about the book and review it, because literature only exists and books only do well when people champion the literature. It's really important.
yeah. And I don't know how you feel, Amy Lou, but for me, this is one of the most vulnerable things I've ever done, is actually putting those words down on paper and having it out there for people to read. I feel like I've given birth to a baby, and now it's not mine anymore. It becomes the reader's, and, so I hope
I
they like it, you know?
Well, I think they will. It's a gorgeous book, and, I do wanna say when you were talking about being vulnerable, I have told this to my husband already, that, I've thought, I don't really care that much if people come to my funeral. Come to my book club. Yeah, that's what I put so much into
Yeah,
my book.
yeah,
So, I don't know if people know how much it means to writers for other people to support us,
yeah,
and, it's worthy books. Linda and myself, we really care about our words. That's why, both of us are educated people. I've written books before, but the reason we do something like, take a class, find a community, work with experts, even though we have a lot of knowledge ourselves. I've taught writing at the college level. I've published 8 books, and I still, took a class because I was doing something a little different, growing, and, it's a demanding class, helped us make decisions about, where our book was going, helped us be decisive, and the end product is richer, and we're smarter, and we meet these wonderful people
yeah, that's
when we
absolutely true. You're a
we
role
come
model for
together.
me, Amy Lou.
Oh, well, and vice versa. So, thank you for, listening to our interview of Who We Think We Are with Linda Scholten. Uh, Check below for the links to her book and to, the blog page that will give you more information. Thanks so much. See you next time.
Thanks so much, Amy Lou. I really, really enjoyed, speaking with you, and thank you for the opportunity. Means a lot. Thanks.